Good evening. My disability has empowered me to challenge the status quo and to push boundaries. But when I was growing up, physical and social limitations existed, telling me that the world wasn't yet ready for somebody like me, somebody proud of their imperfections. Instead, the world told me to be embarrassed and ashamed, to hide and to keep quiet. Historically, we've held the premise that the human condition is essentially unalterable. So there was nothing exciting about having a disability, nor was there anything to be proud of. However, similar to the youth of today, I have always been fascinated at the idea that we can expand and evolve evolution, creating a reality where humans defy their natural, physical, and intellectual boundaries. And I'm especially excited as to what that could mean for people living with a disability. I think it's safe to say that it will be this generation of young minds that encourage us all to look beyond what is human and use technology for good. But with that comes responsibility. Technology and humanity must always collaborate. We must always be asking ourselves who is benefiting from this technology. And furthermore, if we are really wanting to expand human capabilities and cognition, we should also ask whether advancements in technology can enhance social responsibility and perceptions around the least vulnerable in our community. Because in order to think beyond human, we have to accept that our mere existence is forever evolving, and therefore so too is the very definition of what human is. There are so many intricacies within our emotional intelligence and infinite diversity within our physical existence, and disability is part of that. Technology alone will never answer all of our questions, nor will it elevate us to new horizons if we are not ethical in all of our developments. The idea of being half human, half robot really excites me. An opportunity to use technology to enhance human capabilities, to go beyond those bodily functions and cognitions that we know to exist. However, with or without technology, I am someone who has experienced unwavering discrimination throughout my life. And so I stand here this evening to inspire the next generation to use technology for the good of humanity. I was born missing my left arm. And although there really isn't anything that I can't do, I took a long time for me to be comfortable with my appearance. It felt like an obvious inadequacy in a world saturated with an obsessive desire for perfection. The idea that my disability would stop me and hold me back is something that I had to live with for a very, very long time. And although technology and advancements in innovation have significantly changed and as a result created more social opportunities for people living with a disability, there is a fear that technology might be seen as a fix-all solution for the social perceptions and the social barriers and exclusion that disabled people still face. And so we have to look beyond that. Technology in regards to prosthetics there has been an obsessive interest from medieval times. When I was born, the doctors told me that they could fix me. So I was fitted with a prosthetic limb from as young as 18 months age in order to blend in and develop naturally. And that obsessive interest with innovation and engineering dates back to 77 AD. Roman scholar Pliny the Elder talked about a Roman general who had lost his hand during the Second Punic War and subsequently received a prosthesis, enabling him to return to battle. And although now we have evolved to an era where the idea of thinking beyond human and embracing transhuman is no longer a distant reality, it certainly wasn't the way the world looked at technology when I was a child. There was nothing empowering about forcing a toddler to be fitted with a device that was heavy and at times painful. And when I should have been able to rely on technology and my prosthetic the most, it failed me in the cruelest of ways. One thing that prosthetic technology still can't yet do today is detect sensory feedback, such as heat or cold. One morning, I was in the kitchen with my mum, who was making morning tea, and I noticed a plate of biscuits up on the bench. I'd only just been fitted with my new amazing fake arm. And so being a curious toddler, I wandered over to the kitchen counter and I reached up for the biscuit. But because I couldn't feel or detect heat, I didn't realise that in that same process, I had knocked a freshly boiled kettle. And as I looked up, boiling water spilt down onto my neck and chest, resulting in third-degree burns to 15% of my body. The technology that was supposed to make me whole nearly killed me. I spent the next 3 years in and out of hospital for the recovery process, but surprisingly, I actually continued to wear a prosthetic limb until I was about 8 years old. But I never saw myself represented in mainstream media growing up. I never saw a girl with a disability in the magazines or on television portrayed in a positive way. There was nothing beautiful nor exhilarating about having a disability. Because when I was born, the world looked at disability through a medical lens. The medical professionals and the doctors saw me a certain way. They saw me as incapable and incomplete. But of course, I wasn't broken and I didn't need fixing or being put back together. Nevertheless, I grew up in a world where at every turn I was told I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, strong enough, pretty enough. And for years, I believed that and accepted that as my reality. And every time I wore the prosthetic hand, I stood out more than I blended in. The silicone skin that covered the mechanics of the arm was far more obvious than not wearing one at all. And so I made the decision to no longer wear a prosthetic hand. And I knew that I was capable of being more than just a girl with a disability. And thankfully, too, my parents had that same mindset. And because of their approach, I learnt not to make excuses based on my appearance. If there was a task that seemed impossible, I had to first try before asking for help. And so I learnt very quickly how to adapt and how to find my own way of doing things without the use of technology or prosthetics. And one of the most obvious ways for me to prove that I wasn't going to be defined or limited by my disability was through movement. So growing up in Australia with my 3 younger brothers, they taught me to climb trees, they taught me how to pass and kick a footy. And then the natural progression was into sport. And I fell in love with the sport of swimming from a young age. When I was just 10, I competed at my first school swimming carnival. And I won the 50 metres freestyle, beating all the girls and boys with 2 hands. And for the first time in my life, I felt as though I was finally being acknowledged for what I could do, rather than being held back by the perceived assumption from others about what I couldn't. I progressed very quickly and at age 13 was selected onto my first Australian swimming squad. And I continued to wear the green and gold colours very proudly for Australia for just shy of a decade. It was truly a phenomenal experience, travelling the world, winning medals, breaking records, meeting amazing people. I am fortunate that my career in the pool was truly remarkable. But I decided to retire in my early 20s. And at that time, I struggled to transition from being an elite athlete to not being an elite athlete because the world still looked at disability as less than. People still saw me as a fragmented human being. And because of that, I felt as though I constantly had to prove my worth. I had to be the best at every single thing that I did in order to counteract the fact that I had a disability. It's a heavy and unnecessary burden that many people living with a disability carry. But through perseverance and resilience, I was able to show the world how I adapted on my own terms. And so, of course, the question is what changed and why am I standing here in front of you wearing one of the most advanced robotic hands the world has ever seen? Well, thanks to the conversations that have been happening over recent years in the media and social media, predominantly led by younger generations, the way in which the world views disability is beginning to shift. We're no longer looking at disability solely from a medical standpoint, but also a social perspective. And when we view disability through a social lens, we acknowledge that a person is more disabled by their environment and the discrimination of others than their actual disability. And even though, technological advances such as these arms are creating more opportunities, we have to also mention that through this technology, it can be further enhancing that perspective of social acceptance and social advancement for people living with a disability. And there's a growing cadre of young, exciting innovators who have taken things to the next level, using replacement organs, robotic prosthetics and implants, not to restore bodily function, but to enhance it or to alter it. We aren't looking toward an era of transhuman. It already exists quietly without anyone really noticing. Cyborgs are already walking among us. And for me personally, I've been quietly watching the advancements in technological prosthetics. And 18 months ago, I decided to try this hand and was asked by the company to be a patient advocate. For me, the time was right, but so too was the technology and the advancement in social acceptance. This technology is quite amazing. There are electrodes on the inside of the forearm, which align to the remaining forearm muscles in my residual limb. I tell my brain to move my muscles, and with each muscle movement, a signal is sent to the computer in the hand that ranges through various grips and motions. It is quite extraordinary. And this technology has obviously advanced so much from when I was a child. Hands that tried to mimic the human hand to robotic hands. And we even have fantastical prostheses now that light up and change colour. These exciting and futuristic designs are enabling people like me to take back control of our own body image while simultaneously reducing the stigma for people living with a disability, allowing us to fully embrace our appearance. But this technology goes beyond that. Imagine the opportunities and the hope that can be restored for people in conflict, people living with a disability that leads to, people living with disease that leads to disability. The hope that will be restored knowing that technology can and will help. And as we evolve further in the intricacies of AI technology and surgical implementation and machine control and data advancement, and data collection, this technology will improve and we will be able to use AI algorithms to ensure interaction that is better with the environment. Interaction where maybe obstacles and objects can be identified through cameras and sensors that are in the hand. And maybe this sort of technology would have prevented my accident when I was a child. And as we work toward creating something that is so fantastical, we must always remember about the issue of cost and accessibility. Something like this hand currently is worth $20,000 to $100,000. So although we can create and design prosthetics that can expand the human capabilities, it's not really worth it if the people that need it most aren't able to access it. According to the World Health Organization, just less than 12% of amputees and people living with limb difference actually have access to these devices. We also have to ask ourselves, how user-friendly are they? Somebody like me, born missing my limb, has a vastly different experience of an amputee. Somebody who loses their limb later in life might find extreme comfort in wearing an assistive device like this. But for somebody like me, born missing my arm, I've been able to be quite proficient with my residual limb in day-to-day tasks. So it's about making sure we understand what the user needs and how the user feels empowered. The next step, of course, is surgical implantation, osseointegration, connecting directly to the brain and the nervous system. I'm not quite sure that I'm ready to be a cyborg just yet, but of course the opportunities are endless. And with each opportunity and with each advancement, we must always remember the importance of careful integration, customization, and validation to ensure safety and user responsiveness. My role as patient advocate is to educate society. If I had walked into a school wearing this device 10, 15 years ago, people would have been scared and they would have been overwhelmed. But now, when I walk into a school or a new environment to give a presentation, kids are no longer afraid, but intrigued. And it was at a recent school visit where one of the students yelled out, "Oh my God, that's so cool. She's half human, half robot." And it excited me, and I hope it excites you as well. Because it's through this technology that we have an opportunity to change the lives and change humanity for better. But the question I pose to the younger generations and the curious and courageous minds is, will technology evolve so much that something that has historically been seen as such a disadvantage as disability might soon be seen as advantageous? Can you imagine a world where people who have been considered broken and deformed might become the superhumans of our generation? Is it realistic? Or will it depend on how society responds? The advancements in technology are an ever-changing landscape and a very fast-moving market. But it's not just about advancements in technology. It's also about the advancements in the way humanity responds socially and emotionally. So as we encourage each other to dream the impossible and to design and create the unimaginable, the future actually belongs to those who can look at transcending the human form as a combination of humanity and technology. Because it's exciting, but because it's also the right thing to do. Thank you.